Hello guys, what is up? It's the J&J Hockey Podcast. I'm Joshua.
I'm Josiah.
And today we are bringing you episode 9, and it's going to be a big one with big headlines. The first overall pick was just announced, and Josiah is a little grumpy about it. So today we will be covering that, how he fits in the mystery team's lineup, and our predictions for the first round of the playoffs. So, Josiah, why don't you start us off?
Well, the New York Rangers won the first overall pick, and that means that. So I'll quickly give you when all the other teams will be picking. So the Pittsburgh Penguins will be picking 15th overall, the Oilers 14th overall, and then the Toronto Maple Leafs will pick 13th overall. The Florida Panthers will pick 12th. The Nashville Predators will pick 11th. The Winnipeg Jets will pick 10th. The Wild will pick 9th. And then the Sabres will pick 8th. The Devils 7th. The Ducks 6th. The Senators 5th. The Wings 4th. The Senators 3rd. Used to be San Jose's. And then the Kings 2nd. And then, as you know, the Rangers 1st.
All right, so why don't we first talk about the first overall pick? So it's no mystery on who we think they're going to take. Oh, I believe he's going to take Alexi Lafreniere, as does everyone else, including Josiah.
Yep.
So I think what would be much more fun to talk about is where he fits in the lineup. So if you were the coach of the team, where would you play him in their current top six?
Tough one. Probably. I almost want to say that they'd put him on the second line, but I'm not sure.
You wouldn't play him first line because Panarin's. So I mean, not just like in the forward group. Would you be playing him like power play, penalty kill, that kind of thing?
Power play. I don't know about penalty kill though.
Put him second line. So you want to keep the Zibanejad and Panarin together? I think everyone else would be fine. Panarin played with Strome a lot this year, so I'd do Panarin, Strome, and Zibanejad on the first line, and then I would have Lafreniere and Kakko teaming up on the second line with if Buchnevich could play center, that would be ideal. He's naturally a right winger, though. But that's who I would have him playing with. And then my first unit of power play time would be Panarin, Zbad, Strome, Adam Fotz, probably D'Angelo, and then I have Lafreniere leading the second unit with Kakko. Because I want Lafreniere and Kakko to play together a lot because you want them to kind of grow up together as players too. Because they're the pillars of this franchise. And sorry, what would be crazy is if they could get Krasov over here to come to North America, and then their future top line is Lafreniere, Kakko, and Krasov as center. So and then you have like Zbad and Panarin leading the second line, right? That's a insane.
Yeah.
So I think it's best to have Lafreniere.
I hear you. Yeah, it totally would work. Because Panarin and the only thing I don't know about is Kakko, whether or not that, because he had a pretty rough first year.
Right, but a lot of players have had rough first years, and then they've been able to turn it around. So that's why I think having Lafreniere and Kakko play together is good, because even despite his bad year, like it was a weird year for finalists. Like other than Hughes and Makar, we expected those two to be up there. Like most people expected Makar for the Calder, and he'll most likely win. It's like
it was, but obviously that didn't happen because neither of them played well. because all those different factors added up, especially I think not so much for Taco, but Hughes was playing on a team that finished like 26th in the league, so they really struggled, obviously.
Yeah.
So that I'll probably add it to.
Well, the Rangers, if you think about it, though, they were the 24th seed? They weren't that much better.
The Rangers were like 18th place. They were still okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you're right. That's fair.
I mean, at least they can say they played hockey.
All right, that's really nice. Yeah. So how about we? All right, let's play a little make-believe game then. For the next 20 years, would you rather have Hughes, Taco, or Lafreniere?
Which Hughes?
Jack Hughes.
Lafreniere, probably.
This one's tough. I think if Hughes can perform up to his potential, he has the highest ceiling. But Lafreniere, he's probably going to be better in his first year than Hughes was. Like, Hughes was really bad. It's really only between those two, because Taco kind of got the worst of both worlds. He doesn't have the same ceiling as Hughes, but he also had the same bad first year. So I'm not going to take Taco as good of a player I think he's going to be. I think I go with Hughes, because I like Hughes' higher ceiling better, and I still have faith that he can be a great player despite his bad year. It's only a bad year, he had growing pains, and I think a lot of people think it was so bad too is because they overstated how good he was going to be. A lot of people thought like easily over 70 points, which is ridiculous to expect from a rookie. Like unless you're like a Crosby Ovi kind of guy, right?
Hey, don't forget about McDavid.
Yeah, or McDavid. All right, so moving on here from the first overall pick. Actually, okay, no, sorry, one more thing. You wanted Edmonton to win, right?
Yeah.
So, if he had landed with Edmonton, who would you have picked? Who would you have had Lafreniere be playing with in Edmonton?
McDavid, Cassian, and McDavid, Cassian, and Lafreniere on the top lines.
That's fair. I would have wanted Pittsburgh to get him.
Yeah.
Would have been having him play with Crosby and Gensel.
Crosby and Gensel, eh?
Yes. All right, so sorry. So moving on from the first overall pick into the playoffs. So it was definitely a good playing round. Poor Josiah, who's an Edmonton fan, unfortunately for him, his contending team lost, and then they couldn't win the first pick, so he's kind of upset.
Clearly.
But anyway, alright, so moving on here, we're going to go, the reason I mentioned that is because the first matchup we're going to is Chicago-Vegas. So let's talk about that, starting with offense, defense, and goaltending, and then going into intangibles. Go on.
So I think, in my opinion at least, Chicago, I don't know why Edmonton didn't win. But anyways, Chicago and Vegas.
Start with offense.
Well, in offense, I think people underestimate how good Chicago is on offense, actually.
Yeah, Edmonton would know.
Yeah, they would. But the reason I say that is the fact that they really didn't get that. Like, Strome was playing third-line center. Is that, it started out with Doc on third-line center, but then they put Strome because Doc was playing so well.
Yeah, and that's actually your big take that you've mentioned before, too, is that you think Doc's going to be the best player in the 2019 draft class, right?
Not necessarily, but he definitely has a shot. But he didn't have a great rookie year, but the playoffs, he's really picked up his game, I guess.
Right. Okay, so...
I mean, say what you want, but...
So you're giving the offense edge to Chicago?
Yeah, I think Chicago has the offensive edge here, probably.
Okay.
Just due to different...
This one is tough. You would think that looking at these two teams based on, like, standings and, like, stats and such, you would think Vegas. I think you're right, though. I think I am going to give it to Chicago. Despite the Brinkats' bad sophomore year, he is really a good player. Taves and Kane are... Well, Taves and Kane.
World class.
Yeah, exactly. And they got Strom, as you mentioned. Doc is really coming to his own in these playoffs. Vegas has probably got better depth, but they don't have the star power that Chicago has. So, not to mention the experience, which we'll get into in intangibles. So, yeah, I'll give it to Chicago. Moving on to experience. Or, moving on to defense, sorry. This one's no contest. It's Vegas. Like, they defend far better. They don't make their goalies stop as many shots. Like, Edmonton lost largely due to Corey Crawford playing, like, insane. But Vegas doesn't force their goalies to perform like that. Like, Theodore was a fringe Norris Trophy candidate. Chicago's best D-man is 38, Duncan Keith, which... Like, it's not a knock on him. He's still pretty good for his age, but, you know,
pretty good for his age.
He's not his Norris Trophy self like that he was a few years ago. So, definitely I'm giving the edge here to Vegas.
Yeah, and I don't know what happened to Brent Seabrook.
Well, yeah, he fell off a cliff as he got older. It happened.
No, like, he wasn't even playing, though.
Made sense. If you don't play well, you don't get to play. So, you're giving the edge to Vegas?
Yeah.
Alright, so for goaltending here, Robin Lehner will be interested in Vegas whether he plays or not, because he was playing with Chicago earlier in the year. And if Chicago had known there'd be a play-in round, they probably would have kept Lehner in case Crawford had gotten injured. Luckily, Crawford came back in time. So, goaltending-wise, though, Vegas, a far better backup, like, by miles. Whether it's Lehner or Fleury, who you pick kind of depends on who you want to go with. Fleury has been shaky in the past in the playoffs, but lately he's been like on fire when playoff season comes.
Yep.
So they'll probably do Fleury because he has the experience advantage, but they won't be afraid to turn to Lehner if they have to. Although I have heard an interesting theory before that it's better to just have a true number one goalie in the playoffs because you don't want your goalie looking over the shoulder and losing their shoulder and losing their confidence in the postseason. So that's interesting. If you want to go by that format, Chicago definitely wins. Crawford's health is ridiculously shaky, though. It's probably more shakier than like any other goalie in the league. Maybe Ben Bishop is up there, but other than him, like there's no contest. So I think I'll give the edge to Vegas here with Crawford's shaky health.
Yeah. Crawford was only good in the last game of the playoff series. Like his series, in the entire series, he only had a .891 save percentage, so he wasn't actually that good. It was just the last game where he really came through that so Chicago could win.
Right.
But the offense was all Edmonton. It wasn't Chicago at all. So
you think Vegas for goalie?
No. Yes, Vegas for goalie.
Alright, and the last thing is intangibles, which is kind of like X factors, experience, etc. So, who you got?
Chicago.
Okay. Could you elaborate?
And because for Taves, Keith, who had 4 assists in the playing round, Kane had I think 7 points, or maybe that was Taves. One of the two had 7 points. And not to mention Doc was also very good.
Right.
For them, in my opinion, but I don't know. Say what you want. In my opinion, it's probably Kirby Doc.
So your X factors Doc and your experience factor goes to Chicago.
Yeah.
So intangibles, Chicago. Alright, so my X factor is actually Robin Lehner. He's played on both teams, as we mentioned before, so he might have a chip on his shoulder for being traded and, want to beat his old team a little bit extra. He wasn't there that long, but, I think he's the X factor for me because Fleury is inconsistent a lot of the time, and I think that's one of the main reasons they got Lafreniere too, is they didn't know how much they could trust Fleury in the playoffs, as good as he is when he's hot. So if Fleury gets cold, then I think Lafreniere could be a big X factor, as much as Doc Easy. And experience, it's no contest. No one in the league has more experience than Chicago. And Vegas' surprise final run 2 years ago isn't going to change that. Like, Chicago's still got that core there. Kane, Taves, Seabrook in the dressing room if he's not playing. Keith, Crawford was there. So it's no contest. Experience goes to Chicago. So offense, Chicago. Intangibles, Chicago. Defense, Vegas. And goaltending, Vegas for both of us. So who do you think's going to win the series and in how many games?
Probably Vegas in about maybe 6 games.
All right, I'm going to go Vegas in 5. Okay,
So we both agree, we just don't agree on the amount of games.
Yeah, that's basically it. All right, moving on to Calgary-Dallas, which I think is going to be one of the most exciting series in the first round, and I think this is the biggest toss-up. I think for a lot of the others, you have more of a definite winner, even though, it's the playoffs, anything can happen. But in this one, it's the more toss-up on who the favorite to win is, right?
I think I was reading an NHL thing, and most of the writers thought Calgary would win, which I think that they could win.
All right, so why don't you start us off with offense?
I think it's pretty close. I don't know. It depends on if Calgary's guys are. And Gaudreau, what's interesting is Gaudreau actually had 3 points in the playing round. So that's a bit of a surprise, I guess you could say.
Right, yeah, because Gaudreau's past playoff history, especially due to his small stature, has kind of kept him from getting points in the past.
Yeah.
So as good as he is, normally he's not able to produce in the playoffs, so that's why it's a surprise. So, continue.
But anyways, yeah, I think you got to give it to. I really don't know, actually.
Well, you got to pick someone.
It's a really close one, to be honest.
It is. You're right.
Every
single. Why don't you? So if it's a tie on the forwards themselves, you can also count offense from your defensemen. So I think in that case you would probably go Dallas. They have the most pure offensive defensemen.
I wouldn't go with that. I don't know.
If I'm doing this, I go Calgary for sure. Like, look at their personnel. They got Gaudreau, Tkachuk, Backlund, Monahan, all those guys. Lindholm, which normally haven't been able to produce in the past in the playoffs, with the exception of Tkachuk. But this year in the play-in round, anyway, we're able to produce on the Vezina favorite Hellebuyck. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go Calgary's offense on this one.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Okay, so who are you going with?
I guess Calgary. I mean, I still think it's really close.
All right. Moving on to defense. I think this one has to go to Dallas for sure. And this is, a lot of this goes to Ben Bishop more than the defense personnel themselves. Heiskanen is a great, underrated defenseman, although I think he's one of those guys that people are going to say is underrated so many times that he's actually going to become overrated, a lot like Alexander Barkov, in my opinion. But for now, he's underrated, and I think he's easily as good as Dahlin in Buffalo, who gets a lot more of the praise. And Klingberg, who's a really good offensive D-man, kind of counteracts Heskanen's two-way play nicely. They got Lindell, which I think to me is a criminally underrated player. I think Dallas's personnel is all underrated except for Klingberg because he's super flashy. Lindell is an absolute horse. He can produce points, defense. He can play minutes, tons of minutes. Like, he's just an absolute horse. So,
Okay.
and that combined with their full goaltending, just, like, able to just shut things down when it matters, compared to kind of Calgary's kind of more shape. Their defense can be good when it chooses to be, but it's inconsistent and it can go from good to bad in a drop of a hat. So if I'm a coach, I'm taking Dallas's defense all the way.
I really don't know about that.
All right, so
It's
go on.
well, it's just all of their stats except goaltending goes to Dallas. All of the things are so close. It's not even funny, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, but I think you just gotta look at which team is better when it comes to crunch time, which defense is more consistent. That's what I'm looking for along with the personnel. If it's personnel, I would have gone Calgary.
I don't know which one's more consistent. Honestly, you're probably right, though, that Dallas is more consistent, but when it comes to game time, who's going to show up? I don't know.
That's the idea of predictions.
But I guess I'm going to go with Dallas.
All right, moving on to goaltending. This one, as you said earlier, is the only really easy one, so I'll let you start it off.
Dallas.
Right.
But, I mean, there's not much more to it than that, because
Literally, both their starter and their backup is better. Like, they got Goodowin, who is one of the best backups in the league, in my opinion, and then Bishop is an excellent starter, even if he is injury-prone at times because of his big frame and, that, and older, but, he's a really consistent goalie that contemplates them well in Dallas. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Bishop here over David Riddick and Cam Talbot for sure. All right, the last one here is intangibles. So, X Factor and then experience.
Neither of these teams have a lot of playoff experience, in my opinion.
No, you're right, for sure. Bishop has a few runs with Tampa.
I guess.
But other than that, you're right. Not too much, for sure. So
yeah, I don't really know. It's all of the series, I think, goes to Calgary, though, in my opinion.
Okay. So X Factor for me, I think mine is Hestinen because of how well he'll fare in his first, not his first playoff experience, but in these unusual circumstances. Because he's really important to Dallas. So I personally think he's my big X Factor.
Okay.
And my experience, mine goes to Dallas. Like Calgary, in the past, they haven't been able to get out of the playoffs or out very far beyond in the playoffs, despite having big regular season success. So none of their players have big success, with the exception of Lucic, 2011 Cup and 2013 Final. But I don't know if he's really the guy you want to have that experience on your team. So, yeah, I'm gonna go with Dallas because they just have the older players that have been in the league longer and who know how to produce in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna go.
Lucic is far past his prime. There's no discussing that part.
Some of them are, and then others aren't. Like Sagan is still in his prime. Radulov is starting to get a little past. Ben, I feel like already has been. Hestinen is super young. Lindell's in his prime. Klingberg's in his prime. So I think Bishop is in his prime for a goalie. So yeah. So Dallas for intangibles. So I'm gonna go offense, Calgary, defense, Dallas, goaltending Dallas, and intangibles Dallas. So I predict Dallas to win in 7.
I predict Calgary to win in 7.
All right.
But
moving on
either of us could be wrong.
Colorado versus Arizona.
Easy, Colorado in 5.
Okay, but, this is a whole thing. We have to do a whole thing.
I know. I'm just saying.
So offense, I'll start off this time. It's no contest. Like, no dramatic tension on this one. It's Colorado. I don't know. I don't know how much needs to be said about that. All their players are healthy now.
It's Arizona, FYI, but you can say that.
What?
It's Arizona all the way.
Oh, it's
No, I'm joking.
Yeah. So McKinnon, Rantanen, Landeskog, Kadri, Burakovsky. I could go on and on. It's no contest. I'm going Colorado.
That's pretty easy. Colorado has better goal. The only edge that Arizona might have is goaltending, and that's not even a big edge.
Okay, moving on to defense here. Go on.
Defense, probably Colorado.
Yeah, but you have to, like...
They've got Samuel Girard. They've got lots of different guys that can throw the puck around. They've got Eric Johnson. The list keeps going and going and going in terms of how many different guys they can get used to their advantage. I just think, in my opinion, at least, Colorado will take this in 4 or 5 games. The only reason that they get a game, that Arizona might get a game, is because Kemper has a good night. But that'd be the only way, in my opinion.
Yeah. I might give the edge to Arizona. Just like in the Dallas situation, I think Arizona has better team defense. Avalanche are more offensive oriented, which isn't a bad thing because you would be if Nathan McKinnon was your best player and Kel McCarr was your best D-man. So I can understand that. At the same time, though, I don't think as a team they're as strong defensively. Arizona, because they don't have the same offensive personnel, their players are more defensive. Like even also, a lot of their forwards are defensive, with the exception of Hall, Keller, and Kessel. So their defense, their defense has got some names. OEL, like Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Golowski was really good in his prime and is still pretty good. Chikrin is a horse, but just can't produce that much offensively. So I think while it doesn't have the same amount of names, I think Arizona's team defense is better, so I'm actually going to go Arizona.
Oh. Okay.
Alright, moving on to goaltending. This one, it's not a contest, really. I think this one, it's got to go to Arizona. They have one of the best backups in the league, Ranta, who's, when healthy, is probably good enough to be a starter, but he's just not healthy enough. And Kemper, a surprise starter from a few years ago. If he hadn't been injured most of the year, Arizona probably would have been a lot better in the regular season, and he would have been like a fringe Vezina Trophy candidate, like he was last year. Especially with the way he was playing. So I think it's no contest there compared to Grubauer. Grubauer's all right. But, in the past, he's proven to be shaky in the playoffs, famously shaky in the case of 2018. And I don't know, he's just not as good of a starter for me as Kemper. So, I'm going to go Arizona.
What about Francouz, their other guy?
Right, he's not their starter. So, I would take Ranta over Francouz. So,
he had a .923 save percentage in the regular season, and he played quite a few games.
Well, Kemper was just as good, so I'm still going Kemper in Arizona.
Yeah, that's the one that I'd probably give to Arizona. It's still kind of close, but...
Alright, moving on to intangibles. Moving on to intangibles.
Neither of these teams has a ton of experience. I'm not 100% sure who has the most experience, though. It's a close one. But, does anybody on these teams have a lot of experience? Not that I know of.
Kessel won a few cups with Pittsburgh.
Forgot about him.
Stepan has some experience in his Rangers past. They made a few runs. They never won, but they made a few runs. You're right, there's not much there, because recently, like past 10 years recently, neither team has had much success. So, and neither team has won a cup. X factor for me. I want to say Chikrin, but I might say Makar. I'm gonna say Grubauer actually. Because Grubauer, if he can't perform in the playoffs, you're throwing in a first-year goalie as good as he was in the regular season. It's hard to be able to trust that, especially when you're going up against a lockdown defense type of team. So I think Grubauer is my big X factor for Colorado for sure, because of that fact. And then for Arizona, mine's definitely Taylor Hall, because that's their big offensive spark. They need Hall to produce, and Hall should be motivated enough to produce because he wants to get paid. And in order to get an extra little bit in his paycheck, he has to play well in the playoffs. So for those reasons, I think Grubauer and Hall are the big X factors, and the experience factor goes to Arizona on this one. So I think intangibles Arizona.
I guess because neither team really has a lot of experience.
Yeah, there is that, but Arizona they've also been born in more of a losing culture too because they haven't won a lot. So you're right, it's a toss up, but I feel like Arizona is also going to be determined to prove their worth in the playoffs because they haven't been there in a while.
Yeah.
And it's surprising that a team that has only been to the playoffs once in the past 10 years has more experience than Colorado, a team that went to the second round last year.
Mm-hmm.
But they just most of Colorado players are young or younger, which is why they don't have too much playoff experience. So I'm gonna go a very slight edge to Arizona in this case, but Colorado wins in 5.
And like I said, the only reason I would think Arizona would even get a single game would be if they get that little push kind of deal from
Kemper.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to the last matchup in the West, we're going to Vancouver and St. Louis.
Okay.
So, this one is an interesting one. So starting off with offense here, this one's a toss-up. With a lot, I think you gotta factor in power plays in this too. Vancouver's power play was top 5 in the league.
Okay.
So there is that factor that you have to consider. But like St. Louis's forward group has the experience factor. When we get to experience, spoiler alert, it's obviously St. Louis. They just won the cup last year. So
no kidding.
So they have the experience factor all the way around, whereas Vancouver hasn't been to the playoffs in 5 years. So Vancouver's offense is really good. They got star power for days: Pettersson, Messer, Horvat, Miller. And I think Ferland is a big guy for them as well. And Virtanen has that same Ferland game. This is a toss-up, honestly, for me. St. Louis, they got Tarasenko, O'Reilly, Schwartz, those guys, even Braden Shen. But I think a slight edge to Vancouver in offense. Hello?
Yeah, for sure. The Vancouver, it all depends on how Tarasenko will play here coming right up, right? If he comes back and is his old self, 30-goal sniper, then it will be a lot closer.
Yeah.
Then, if you get that kind of deal where he comes back and he's like, what is this? What am I doing here, right? Kind of deal?
Yeah. There's also something to consider, too. Vancouver has played pretty well since they came back from COVID. Like, they played pretty well in the first period of their exhibition game against Jets, and then really struggled and left Markstrom out to dry, and lost that first game against Mini, and then they won the next 3, and they played very well in those 3 games. And I think it was also important for Vancouver too to learn that they could play good hockey even without Markstrom playing well. In that last game, 3 of the 4 goals Markstrom let in were bad goals, like short, bad angles. Markstrom was pretty shaky, and Vancouver still won. I think it was important for them to learn that they can't rely on Markstrom all the time, and that they have to learn to play defense. They have to learn on how to win without relying on Markstrom playing insanely well every game. And I think that last game, it was important for Markstrom to not have to play super well, right? And Vancouver still wins.
For sure. You got to be able to...
Moving on to defense.
Buckle down.
This one, St. Louis has better team defense. If you were going by personnel, it's kind of a toss-up. I still go St. Louis, so for those reasons, I'm going to go St. Louis. You can elaborate a little more.
I mean, yeah, St. Louis is the better team personnel, in my opinion, by still a long shot. Because they've got Pietrangelo, who is better than any defenseman on the key. He gets as many points as he is, yet he can still play defensive. You've got Justin Falk there. You've got all those guys that can.
Yeah, Parrott, really Dunn. That's a solid top 4 right there.
Do what you need to do, but it's still kind of a close one. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. Tanev, I think, is the best defensive D-man on either of the 2 squads, though.
Yeah, you could go with that. Maybe. I don't know.
Alright, so yeah, I'll go St. Louis for defense. Moving on to goaltending, you can start off.
I don't know, to be honest. It's pretty close for me, to be honest. I'm not really dead set on one guy, right?
Right. You have to make a decision, because that's the idea of predictions.
I know. You don't have to remind me. But, I mean, if we're going off of, if we're going to go with one guy, it's probably going to be Binnington over Markstrom, I think. Mostly because we don't know how Markstrom will react in the playoffs as much.
Yeah.
With Binnington, you know that he'll be solid, right?
Yep.
He's not going to steal the show or anything, but he'll still be solid.
Markstrom was better this year than Binnington, though. I think you got to keep that in mind. And St. Louis has been slumping since they got back, going back to my original point. So this one is tougher. I think for right now, until we see the opening game, I think I'm going to go Vancouver as the edge. In experience, yeah, Binnington is more experienced than Markstrom. Markstrom has never been to the playoffs. Meanwhile, Binnington won in his first year. So in that respect, you go Binnington, but Binnington was just okay this year at best for St. Louis.
I guess.
Not a Vezina candidate like he was last year. And Markstrom was very good. I would have had him top 3 in Vezina. Like, I would have had him over Vasilevsky.
Yeah.
So,
so would I.
Not winning, probably, 3rd for me. But...
For sure.
But, yeah, Markstrom played better this year than Binnington. Binnington has that experience factor, but I think overall I'm going to go Vancouver.
Okay, that's an interesting take.
Okay, last thing for intangibles, who's your X factor for both teams? Because we already know who wins experience.
I think Vladimir Tarasenko.
That's a good X factor, yeah.
And Jacob Markstrom.
Okay.
But, anyways, you can go with what you want to go with.
Well, you have to elaborate. You have to, explain.
But, because Tarasenko, obviously, like I mentioned, coming back from the injury, he's going to want to do, he's really going to want to try his best.
Right. Okay.
But I don't know for sure who's going to win that series. It's going to be a pretty close one, I think.
Yeah. Honestly, I have the same X factors, but for the sake of not being boring and having different choices, I'll just pick an X factor for both teams. I think my first one for Vancouver, it's kind of an obvious one, Pettersson. Main offensive guy. You want to see how he'll react in the real playoffs. I thought he played great in the play-in run against Minnesota. Matt Dumba in particular was really mugging him, and he just took it, and he was still finding a way to produce, especially in the final 2 games. So I'm going to go Pettersson as my X factor for Vancouver, especially since he's their focal point on offense. And for St. Louis, if I can't take Tarasenko, I'm going to go Binnington. Because St. Louis doesn't, like, Jake Allen, he's a great backup, but he's not a good starter. He's already proven that. That's why they had to get Binnington last year in the first place.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So if they have to turn to him, I think they're in trouble. So Binnington has to play well, and he has to remake that magic of last year, and he has to kind of turn around his just so-so regular season.
He has to be like, what you mean is he has to be as consistent as he was in the regular season?
No, he has to be better than in the regular season.
He was about as good in the regular season as he was in the playoffs. Not in the playoffs last year.
Well, his playoffs last year were pretty good. His regular season was just okay, so... Alright, anyway, I was planning to do all the matchups, but this is already a pretty long podcast, so I think we'll just call it quits, and we'll do the East podcast, like, some other time.
Okay.
Alright, that's it for the J&J Hockey Podcast, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. We will see you guys later. Any final words?
No. But we'll try to do the East podcast as soon as possible. Anyways.
Alright, bye.